A lot of insight and even peace of mind can be gained by looking back on past events with a new perspective, considering things that you hadn't thought of before. And that is exactly what RWBY Volume 9 Beyond Episode 2 is all about. It takes place after Team RWBY and Jaune have returned to Remnant and focuses on Jaune reflecting back on his time in the Ever After and trying to gain a new perspective around it. It is a very important moment for Jaune, something that we might not have actually gotten to explore in Volume 10, and is an excellent inclusion for one of these Beyond episodes, to see how Jaune is handling being back in Remnant after everything he went through in the Ever After. We start off the episode with Jaune's inner monologue, as though he's writing his first entry into a journal, something that we find out he has been advised to write by Oscar/Ozpin as a way to come to terms with everything that he's experienced, put his thoughts on paper, and gain that new perspective. The first thing we actually see in this episode is a wider view of the city of Vacuo, where we get to see the full layout where Shade Academy is in the center with all of the other buildings around it. Things that we had only heard about in Before the Dawn and had seen little snippets of here and there, but finally getting the full view of the city of Vacuo really puts into perspective how imposing Shade Academy actually is and how the other structures there don't really seem as permanent. As we learned in Before the Dawn, in the city of Vacuo, the buildings on the outskirts are often torn down, destroyed by Grimm, and have to be rebuilt time and again. So finally seeing the full city on screen really does give us that extra perspective as well. Jaune is overlooking the city and reminiscing about how he feels about coming back to Remnant. He's happy to be back with Nora and Ren, and it's honestly really nice to see Nora and Ren kind of laughing and happy on screen. An emotion I can imagine neither of them had felt all that much of since the events that happened in Atlas. But Jaune, although he's happy to see them again, he's not the same boy that they once knew. He is the Rusted Knight. Something that Nora can't help but point out at every opportunity she gets, apparently. It's good to know that Nora is still the Nora that we've come to know and love, even though her and Ren are going through their own struggles, something that Jaune notes as well, something that hopefully will be elaborated on in Volume 10. So, in the meantime, Jaune has been meeting with the one person that he thinks would be able to understand his predicament the most. He has been meeting with Oscar. Specifically, it's shown that Jaune is meeting with Oscar and not Ozpin. Even though Ozpin has lived these many different lifetimes, would have felt more out of place, Oscar is probably the one who can relate to him most, having all of these new experiences and memories thrust upon him and his life changing drastically in a moment. Jaune coming back to Remnant, the life that he knew, being forever changed by the many years and decades that he spent in the Ever After. And we find this out because Oscar is relating to Jaune, saying that he's been the subject of a few fairy tales himself. And Jaune corrects him by saying, "You mean Ozpin has, right?" And Oscar, of course, corrects himself. This also goes to show that the line between Oscar and Ozpin is being blurred to the point where it seems as though they can almost not tell the difference between one and the other. Oscar is speaking as though he is Ozpin, and if Ozpin was in control, which he might be at this point, that could also be what's happening here. Jaune's just talking to Ozpin instead, but I don't think there would be any reason why they would, switch perspectives, not tell Jaune about that or anything like that. Oscar just has access to so many of Ozpin's memories, he's treating them as his own now. Perhaps this is even implying that their souls have already gone through the merger. In the episode 11 animatic, it was shown that Oscar and Ozpin are both desperately trying to fight the merger between their souls, but that was also during the time that Team RWBY and Jaune were gone. This moment between Jaune and Oscar is taking place, obviously, with Jaune there, after Team RWBY and Jaune get back. So that could be days, weeks, possibly even months after we saw Oscar and Ozpin fighting their merger. Perhaps that merger may have already happened. But to know that for sure, we will just have to wait and see what happens. And I promise I will be making a video soon, hopefully this week, on the episode 11 animatic, so stay tuned for that as well. Make sure to subscribe if you're interested in it. For now, Jaune and Oscar are talking, and Oscar is asking Jaune how that journal is coming. Jaune hasn't really started yet. He doesn't really know how to. And this is where Oscar advises Jaune to think about his time in the Ever After. Think about the good moments. And Jaune, of course, asks, "Oh, only think about the positive?" And Oscar says, not exactly like that. Think about the good moments and what it was all for, in order to gain that new perspective. And Jaune reflects on his time in the Ever After, meeting Alex and Louis, which to Jaune, meeting them was like an incredible experience in and of itself, probably for multiple reasons. Hearing about the history of Remnant from them for one, but also Alex and Louis were probably the first humans that Jaune came in contact with for, well, given the look of him as the Rusted Knight, he was probably in his late 20s, early 30s by that point. It had probably been more than a decade since he had seen another human, waiting for Team RWBY to finally arrive, waiting to be able to see his friends again. Seeing Alex and Louis must have been a heck of an experience for him. He remembers talking with them, getting to know them, and Louis being a bit of an enigma because he was never part of the story that he remembered. But Louis was very quick to catch on that Jaune knew more than he let on. Both of them were shocked to hear that Jaune was also from Remnant, and Jaune was shocked to hear that Alex and Louis were from Vacuo, from a time before the war, from a time before huntsmen and huntresses. But now, this begs the question, Alex and Louis, or rather, Louis in particular, since he's the one who made it back to Remnant, now knows about the future of Remnant. And he made it back to Remnant with that knowledge. So, how did Jaune's words possibly affect the future of Remnant? And I guess another question, did Louis use that information, use that knowledge to affect anything in the future, plan his actions accordingly? Obviously, the experiences that he had in the Ever After would have some effect on him and the way that he handled situations in the future and what knowledge he'd use going forward, but that really brings into question a whole bunch of, time travel shenanigans, whether you give information to a past person and how that could potentially affect the future, etc. Though Louis having that information was also probably a prerequisite for things to happen the way they did, for Remnant to end up the way it was currently. The whole time travel conundrum, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it down in the comments below, but it does raise a few questions. And also, I'm guessing Jaune probably left out the part about their entire adventure being a fairy tale, being the girl who fell through the world, being a story about Alex and Louis not being in it, because then that might have affected how things played out in the Ever After in and of itself. Regardless of the questions that I have, though, in Jaune's case, there are a lot of positive memories that he does have in the Ever After. One that's brought up in this moment is the first time himself, Alex and Louis went to the Garden Market, the same place that the Curious Cat brought Team RWBY to in the Ever After, in the course of Volume 9, and where Jaune actually first re-encountered Team RWBY as the Rusted Knight. At the market, well, the people of the Ever After had no concept of the days of the week, so they made one just for the humans that were coming, and they called it Splatters Day. And Splatters Day happened every day for a time, simply because the Afterins just didn't understand. And every Splatters Day, there was a farmer's market. But also not really understanding the concept of a farmer's market, where farmers would come and sell their own goods. Instead, you could just buy farmers who would come and grow crops for you for a short time. Just, little interesting things that happened in the Ever After. And then, most importantly, at the end of every day, Jaune remembers that they'd all go back and have a campfire. Those were the moments that he remembered most. Louis writing his book, the story that would eventually lead Team RWBY to Jaune, the girl who fell through the world, or at least the notes that would become the girl who fell through the world. And Alex being in awe of Jaune's stories, something that just seemed mundane to him, just the choices that he made throughout his life, the things that happened to him from day to day. But they were both enthralled by his stories, and Jaune reminisces saying that it was almost like having his team back again, having people again who made him feel like he was more than what he was. People who see you in a way that you can't see yourself. And those are very powerful words to describe good friendships and good relationships throughout life. Those are some very impactful words, and it also shows how Jaune's self-reflection has grown a lot from the time he was, 19 years old at the end of Volume 8 to all of the years and experience that he's gained in the Ever After. He has become a lot wiser and able to self-reflect on a long life, even though he's now 19 again. He is certainly not the young boy that the rest of his team remembers. Though I have a feeling there's still quite a bit of the old Jaune remaining in him yet. In the end, it is that warmth that a campfire brings. Laughter, a good meal, being around friends and family, and forgetting the worries of the world that means so much to Jaune. And he relates it back to the current time, where he sees those fires all around the city of Vacuo at night. And he wonders what the people are saying, what they're building, the hope that they're stoking, and what they'll say after everything is all over. And then, after reflecting upon this, he realizes that maybe there is something to writing his words out in a journal. And finally, at the end of the episode, he asks Oscar, "Do you think we're gonna make it?" And Oscar turns to him and says, "Around those campfires, did it really matter?" And Jaune says, "No, I guess it doesn't." And that is where the episode ends. Honestly, on a bit of a somber note, because Oscar brushed off that question. Like, sure, around those campfires where you're spreading hope, does it really matter whether you're going to make it or not? It matters how you feel in that moment. There is definitely a positive lesson to be learned there, but I also can't ignore the fact that Oscar did dodge that question. I don't think he's all that confident that they're going to be able to make it through. Because, well, if we're looking at things, Salem has 2 relics, Vale is gone, Atlas is gone, the technology and the best fighting force that they had on Remnant with the Atlas military is gone. They do have 3 maidens on their side, Theodore, Ozpin, etc., but things are certainly dire and everyone kind of knows it. So things are definitely not that great, but there is hope to be found. The warmth of that campfire that Jaune was talking about, the new perspective that he kind of gained by reflecting on his time in the Ever After, remembering those campfires and remembering and seeing the campfires all across Vacuo. The warmth of that campfire, of those campfires, is still there. For every person out in Vacuo, there still is something that they are clinging to. There is still people that they can laugh with, share a good meal with. It may not be a gourmet meal, but it's food. Warm food to put into their stomachs, to keep them going another day. There is hope for the future, and honestly, I think that is the core message of this episode of RWBY Volume 9 Beyond. To have that hope for the future. To take a look back on everything that you've been through and see the good times for what they were for. Not necessarily just to focus on the positive, but to understand why things happened, why those good times happened, and what you were fighting for. This was an excellent episode, and I'm happy it was a part of RWBY Volume 9 Beyond. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think of Jaune's change in perspective throughout this episode, and his reflection on his time in the Ever After? And also, do you think that Oscar and Ozpin have completed their merge? If they haven't, then they've gotten a lot closer to doing so. Both of them may be fighting it, but there's only so much that they can do, since this was put in place by one of the gods of their world. Not an actual god, as we found out in Volume 9, but a very powerful being nonetheless, with the control over life and death. I don't know how much they will be able to fight against that forever. There's still many unanswered questions and so many more things that I'm looking forward to finding out about the world of RWBY. We got to learn a little bit more in this episode, and I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. There will be more videos coming. There's still 2 more episodes of RWBY Volume 9 Beyond left to cover, coming next week and the week after, as well as the episode 11 animatic, and so many more things that I still want to talk about for the RWBY series, so there are many more videos to come. And hopefully you'll all join me for that journey. Also, if you want to hang out and chat about RWBY or video games or anything else that may come across your mind, I also stream 3 times a week over on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evening. In fact, I'll be going live very shortly after this video drops, so I look forward to seeing you all there. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.